World Soccer Radio is on the air. Sports Byline USA on this beautiful Thursday night here in Southern California. At least it's beautiful where I am, and I hope it is where you are because it's a pleasure to be with you guys. My name is Danny Page, in for Nick Gieber this week. Nick, just a couple more days of vacation. Boy, I hope he's enjoying that time away. You know, it's funny, when someone you work closely with is away for a period of time, it seems like forever for you, but it seems to go by so quickly for them. Something that surely Nick will experience when I'm in Europe this summer. Yes, you hear that, Nick? I'm announcing my 3-week departure live on air right here. It's great to be with you guys, and two guests I'm really excited about tonight that will help us run through the next 60 minutes. We'll go international, talking about the FIFA date yesterday. And then we'll also look at the Champions League and a lot of other issues with David Mosse. We haven't had Statman Mosse on in a couple weeks. So Dave and I will have a nice, candid chat. And then we speak to Greg Sutton coming up a little bit later. He's a TV commentator now for the Montreal Impact. Yes, we'll stay north of the border for everybody listening in Canada. Greg Sutton, a former Major League Soccer goalkeeper who is now a broadcaster for the Impact. He will be our guest coming up in the last big segment of the show. Now's the time for you to get in touch with us. Hit me up on Twitter at World Soccer Radio. That's at World Soccer Radio. You can find David Mosse at Statman Mosse. He'll join us in the next segment. And again, a lot of the issues, we want to get into a lot of the issues with David we've been discussing all week long. Things like Arsenal, things like the U.S. team, England, Chivas USA, all that and a whole lot more. Thanks to all of you listening on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network, plus everyone else on the iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn app. Big ups to our men and women in uniform listening around the world on the American Forces Network. My name is Danny Page, in for Nick Gieber on World Soccer Radio. Remember, you can also watch on our website, watchwsr.com. Now's the time. Get your tweets in, your questions for Mosse and Greg Sutton. That's at World Soccer Radio, or just give us a call, 800-878-PLAY, 800-878-PLAY. Yeah, we're going to take a break here on the show. When we come back, we'll talk to the stat man, the man, David Mosse, just set for kickoff right here on World Soccer Radio. Break, and we'll be right back. See you guys in a second. All right. World Soccer Radio, Sports Byline USA. My name is Danny Page. Pleasure to be with you here on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network. What up, guys? Listening on our affiliate stations. It's my pleasure to be with you. A little sort of fireside chat here on this Thursday night. Two guests coming up on today's show to help me through the action. Greg Sutton will be joining us a little bit later, former MLS goalkeeper, now a broadcaster for the Montreal Impact. It'll be great chatting with Greg a bit later on. But let me tell you how things go on this show. Well, first of all, you guys come first. Send me a tweet at World Soccer Radio or give us a call, 800-878-PLAY. That's 800-878-PLAY. But here's how things go on the show, okay? Right? Is basically Nick and I babble on and on for 7-8 days, sometimes weeks at a time, and then David Mosse comes on the show, and then he tells us actually what is really going on in world football. Then he brings in, a true and valid opinion, and that's why we bring David into the show now. He, the man knows it all, and certainly, informs a couple poor sods like me and Nick. What up, big guy? What's going on?
Danny, how are you?
Doing well. It just is such a special time of year that we're building towards, David. I mean, I know all of us are so wrapped up in the Barclays Premier League and a lot of the European leagues, the Champions League, Major League Soccer, but you want to. There are so many months in that 48-month cycle, about 45 of them, where you want to say the World Cup's not that big a deal, but as it gets closer, it really does feel like a big deal, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm usually not a fan of these international friendlies that interrupt the club season. But I have to say, this week, this international break had a different feel to it because we are 100 days away now, and so this is starting to get real here. I mean, these teams are in the final stage of their preparations, and so
sure.
I did watch a lot of these games with a closer eye, and I think they were pretty meaningful actually in terms of looking ahead to what might happen this summer.
What did you take away most? If you were writing a headline, if you were the editor of a newspaper covering world football, and you were writing a headline, what would be your big headline from the international date?
Well, I think the three best teams, Brazil, Spain, and Germany, all have major questions up front. They all have loads of talent in the attacking third in terms of wide players and attacking midfielders, but there is an issue in that center forward spot. Brazil is now having to sweat out the fitness of Fred because he's the only thing standing between Joe starting World Cup games, which is a scenario none of us are looking forward to. Germany has a major issue right now. They have all these talented players in Ozil and Royce and Schürrle and Podolski and Götze, but they really lack a center forward they can rely on. I mean, Klose started against Germany and had to come off at halftime, and the other option is Mario Gomez, who's had an injury-riddled season at Fiorentina. So to me, they have to seriously think about whether they might want to play with a false nine and figure out some way around the.
What about the same thing for Brazil too? What about just using Neymar up top?
Absolutely, it's something they've tinkered with in the last couple of friendlies, and I think he's starting to consider it. Because like I said, if the Fred from the Confederations Cup shows up this summer, then they're in good shape. Then they're fine. But if he doesn't, then it opens up major question marks up front. And they do have to perhaps think of some outside-the-box solutions. And then Spain, to me, was the most interesting because it was finally the long-awaited debut of Diego Costa, which I was watching attentively.
Do you have sour grapes over that, by the way, a little bit, as someone from Brazil?
But the narrative has taken an interesting turn in the last 24 hours because he did have kind of a lackluster performance against Italy.
Right.
And listen, I object to him playing for Spain on ethical terms because to me, if you're born and live the first 18 years of your life in a country and your whole family's from that country, that should be your country regardless of if your profession causes you to move somewhere else. And the fact that he played 2 friendlies for Brazil 6 months ago and now suiting up for Spain to me is a joke.
Yep.
But I also think that for footballing reasons, Brazil made a little more sense for him. Atletico Madrid plays more of a counter-attacking approach, and he really excels at running at defenders in space and getting behind the defense.
Right.
And also he's big and strong, and he's good in the air, and he scores a lot of goals from crosses. And none of that really fits into Spain's style. Spain is a team that has the ball the whole game in the opposition half. They play against these packed-in defenses and have to rely on these sort of intricate passing moves, and that's not really his strength.
Not a bit.
I actually could see that not being such a great fit there. And I think he might live to regret. I think he might have worked out better in Brazil playing alongside Neymar up there and having more space to operate. But, we'll have to see. It was only his first match. But so to me, that was the big takeaway. I mean, the three favorites to me all have a serious question mark still up front. And whichever one manages to resolve that, I think was probably going to be the team lifting the trophy this summer.
Yeah, I think it is funny that those three all have those issues, and that when we look at the nations with some of the top strikers, in the world, when you look at Lewandowski, obviously, when you look at Falcao, who, looks like he will not be in the tournament, they play for sort of those second and third level teams. It's just kind of the way that the game really starts to flow. Were you at Fox Sports on Wednesday? Was everybody pretty gaga over Danny Sturridge's goal? And what do you think about the young man?
No, it was a nice goal and a good performance for Sturridge, and he
and
really
the winner. It was the winner. To me, that's the issue.
And I've been saying for a long time that he really is the X factor for England, because if he can translate his Liverpool form of the past couple of years to the national team, then that gives him another major impact player alongside Rooney, which is something they haven't had in a very long time. But overall, I thought it was a pretty forgettable performance for England.
It was.
And they're a team, to me, much like the U.S., that came out of qualifying with some momentum and feeling good about themselves, and then the 1-2 punch of getting a tough draw, and then some of their recent friendly results. I think a lot of the airs come out of the balloon lately, and all of a sudden the expectations aren't as high anymore. At least that's kind of what I'm sensing.
That just sounds like a lot like the United States in general. David, did you end up having a look at the U.S. game at all? Kind of what are your thoughts there? I've been brutally frustrated over these last 24 hours.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing to keep in mind is Ukraine is a very good team. They're better than half the teams that are in the World Cup.
But they're not better than Germany and Portugal.
No. Ukraine, they drew England twice in qualifying, the 1-1 at Wembley and 0-0 in Kiev. They finished only 1 point behind them, and then they went out to France in the playoffs 3-2 on aggregate. So they're a legitimate team. They have a couple of players in Yarmolenko and Konoplyanka who are, frankly, better than anybody on the U.S.
Yeah.
So I wasn't that surprised, especially since it wasn't quite a full-strength team for the U.S. There were several guys missing. But still, it's concerning. I mean, the way they finished last season, those last two friendlies, and then this performance, you do kind of feel like they're heading in the wrong direction a little bit here.
Exactly.
And you're right. I mean, the group they landed in, they have no margin for error. They need to play at their absolute best in all three matches to have any shot of advancing. So right now I'm not really getting that vibe from this team at all.
And it was just the performance more than the result. U.S. just offered nothing in an attacking sense and defended horribly.
Yeah, I think the Dempsey thing is a real issue. I don't know what's happened with him, but his form has really dropped. And Altidore too had such a great year at the international level last year, and then this awful season with Sunderland, and you just wondered if that was going to start to get in his head and affect him for the U.S. as well.
Forget about his head; it's in my head.
I actually was impressed with Aaron Johansson, and
he's great
when he came on. So he's somebody that could be perhaps a little bit of a spark there. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely some major concerns, no doubt about it.
Yeah, certainly worried about the U.S. men's national team. I think for you in Brazil, because you are a Brazil native, if I'm not mistaken, I think you do a better job of hiding your concerns, I guess. Maybe that's what happens when you've won multiple World Cups. But I'm freaking out over here, man, okay? We're gonna take a break in a second here, David. We'll hang to the other side. I want to talk with you a little bit about the club game and such after this timeout. Sound good?
Yep.
David Mosse, like I said, this is how the show goes. Nick and I just blabber about nothingness for days, and then we bring David in, and he educates us on a true perspective. What a great point. When you look at Germany and Brazil and Spain, they have some real. A lot of the top nations have some real things to figure out without any international dates to do it, really, until training camps open in late May. It's going to be a very unpredictable tournament. I think the Golden Boot is wide open. Neymar's got to be the favorite. But besides that, I don't know, man. We're going to take a time out here on World Soccer Radio. We'll delve into the European club game when we return on WSR Sports Byline USA. Hit me up on Twitter at World Soccer Radio. We'll be right back. All right, World Soccer Radio. This is how you, this is how you come back from break, man. My name is Danny Page. Nice to be with you on this Thursday night. I'll be with you tomorrow night as well. Joe Curley will be co-hosting, writer for the Ventura County Star here in SoCal, who's covered, he's covered, a European Championship abroad, World Cups as well. Look forward to chatting with Joe. But now we're with the man, the myth himself. We're with Mosse. David, welcome back to the show. And just kind of, as we round out the international chatter, just kind of any final thoughts on what went down over this FIFA date, this FIFA break?
Well, Danny, I can barely hear you, first of all. I don't know if you guys are having some issues there.
All right. I mean, I just said, any final thoughts on what went down over this FIFA break on Wednesday? Anything else?
There you go. I think you forgot to press the on button on your microphone. But,
yeah, no, for sure.
No, Danny, I was very impressed by France. I think France and Argentina are the other two teams that, because of the draw now, have to be looked at as serious contenders. Now, Argentina looked very bad in a 0-0 draw with Romania. Messi ended up puking on the field during the game.
Yeah.
But France was very impressive in the way they brushed aside the Netherlands and the kind of form that guys like Benzema and Ribéry and Pogba and Mangala are in. To me, I'm starting to get on the France bandwagon here, and I love Didier Deschamps as a manager, so I think they could be a serious threat here to have their best tournament, certainly since Zidane retired in 2006.
I think it's something that we see from time to time, David, when teams are built, or when you're going into a major tournament, specifically in Europe, and you say, oh, no, I don't think so. This team seems more built for the next World Cup. And I think we saw that a little bit with Spain at the 2008 Euros. Well, they were really a contender. I think most expected them to really flourish in 2010, but they were right there. And obviously this French team is being built more for the 2016 Euros, which they're hosting in France, but they seem ready to contend right away.
Yeah, so much about them comes down to the chemistry and the harmony in the dressing room, and they seem to have that this time around. Like I said, Deschamps has really done a nice job, and, they seem to be playing well as a team now. Remember, they dodged a major bullet in qualifying. They lost that first leg to Ukraine 2-0, looked to be in big trouble, but then turned it around at home. So they seem to have taken a lot of momentum from that. And, I'm very high on France. I mean, they're in a group now with Switzerland, Ecuador, and Honduras, I believe. So that's no problem right there. They should win that group and be on their way to a good tournament for sure.
David Mosse with us. I think last one we'll talk about on the international side. What do you think about Italy? To me, Italy has some really outstanding players. They obviously made the run to the European finals, but I get a feeling they might be the ones to actually lay an egg in that group instead of England. It's just a personal vibe, kind of. David, you there?
I am, Danny.
Yeah.
You're cutting in and out. What was that last question?
David's having some problems hearing us on World Soccer Radio. Last question is just about the Italians. It's just about I just have this feeling, this vibe that they may really underachieve. I couldn't tell you why. They just don't seem to be as structured as they often are.
Yeah, I was very impressed with them at the last Euros. I thought Prandelli did a nice job. They played some really attractive football there in the midfield with Pirlo and Montolivo and guys like that. So I kind of thought they were on the right track, and they had a pretty good qualifying campaign. They were actually the first European team to qualify. I agree. They look to have run out of steam a little bit here, and they're another team that has, when you're relying on Balotelli up front, that's always going to be a little bit of a question mark. And obviously they landed in a very tough group. So, I'm not as high on the Italians as I thought I was going to be at earlier points in this cycle. But, that group to me is the most fascinating by far. You have three former champions in Italy, England, and Uruguay. And you could talk me into any one of those three teams, missing out on the knockout stage. So, that to me is just going to be an incredible battle every match in that group.
David Mosse with us. No love for the Costa Ricans, man. Bummer. Hey, I think as we move to the club game, the big news today, obviously, Jack Wilshere injured. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. What say you about Arsenal? Everyone has their own opinion on Wenger and where this team is this year. It's been a major disappointment.
Yeah, the league is starting to get away from them, and I think they're out of the Champions League. I don't think there's any chance that they could possibly overturn that 2-goal deficit in Munich. So to me, that really leaves the FA Cup as their really one chance to end that trophy drought finally. And, they face Everton this weekend, which is a tough game, but it is at home. And then they get through that, and they're at Wembley in the semis, and we'll see. But, yeah, they're just so snake-bitten injury-wise, Arsenal. I mean, it always seems to happen around this point in the season where they start losing key players. Walcott's already gone for the season. Now Wilshere is virtually done for the year. And then, Ramsey's been out so long, and all the issues they've had with Giroud. So, yeah, and then Ozil, of course, his form is really dipped. So,
terrible.
Yeah, this is a team headed in the wrong direction, certainly. And, I think this is going to be another season of disappointment for the Gunners.
Hey, we probably won't talk to you before next week's Champions League games, but you said you don't think Arsenal can turn it around against Bayern Munich. I do have a feeling that Man City may be able to go to the new camp and pull off a miracle. Am I crazy?
Well, certainly of the two English teams, City and Arsenal, they're the ones I'd give a puncher's chance, only because I still don't like what I'm seeing from Barcelona. They struggled this past weekend at home against Almeria. That game was 2-1 with 10 minutes left, and the fans jeering, and then they scored twice in the end to kind of dress up the scoreline. But they're still not playing well. City has Aguero back, who, remember, missed the first leg. So they absolutely have the firepower to go there and score some goals and cause some problems. Now, listen, overturning a 2-goal deficit is in Barcelona is still a very tall order, especially because, the issue with Barcelona to me this season is they don't have the squad depth you need. And when he's tried to rotate the squad, he's really paid the price for it. They're very weak in certain spots in terms of their backups. But their starting 11, when they put out their strongest side, is still very, very, very good, as they showed in the first leg. And I expect a similar lineup this time around. So I definitely still fancy Barcelona to move on. But I would agree with you. Unlike Bayern Arsenal, where I think there's zero chance, that one I would leave the door slightly open still for the English team.
I think we're seeing, too, the difference that Fernandinho and Nasri and Aguero make for that City team. And if they're in the starting lineup a couple weeks ago, City may well have won that home match. And I think that they could at least give Barcelona some more problems in an attacking sense at the new camp coming up next week.
Yeah, I was very puzzled by Pellegrini's decision to play Kolarov in the midfield in that game. First of all, he only played with one striker, which is already kind of a concession to a more defensive approach. But at least if he had played Navas, Nasri, and Silva behind the striker, to me, I could have bought that. I know Nasri was just coming back from an injury, but still, to play only one striker and then play Kolarov as one of your attacking players, to me, that was much too defensive of a lineup. He gave Barcelona way too much respect there, and he paid the price for it. I mean, they got a terrible break, obviously, on that penalty. I do think it was outside the area, the Demicheli's foul on Messi. But even still, I mean, they were getting dominated even when it was 11-on-11. And then even if that wasn't a penalty, it still would have been a red card, so they would have had to play the last 40 minutes or so of that match down a man. So odds are they would have gotten some sort of negative result and would have been sort of up against it here going into the second leg anyway. But you're right. I mean, to me, there's no excuse this time around for him to not put all his best players out there and just go for it because, they've already proven on match day 6. I mean, they scored 3 unanswered goals in Munich and beat Bayern, a match they were down 2-0 early and ended up winning 3-2. And frankly, if Pellegrini had gotten the math right and understood the rules, they might have scored more goals in that match and finished first in the group and avoided having to face Barcelona. But the point is, City is explosive like that. They can score goals in bunches. So, yeah, I mean, if Pellegrini gets the lineup right, I think they could definitely cause Barcelona some problems.
David Mosse, the all-knowing from Fox Sports. Just as we're wrapping things up, looking ahead to the games you'll work next week for Fox in the Champions League the next couple weeks, what else are you really looking forward to? Obviously, in just under a fortnight, the match between Man United and Olympiacos, of course. What else are you keeping your eye on?
Well, the one tie that's definitely still up for grabs is obviously Chelsea-Galatasaray.
Right.
And although I would definitely fancy Chelsea to move on there, but it is 1-1. And obviously you have the return of Didier Drogba to Stamford Bridge, so that's going to be just an incredible scene. And then, you mentioned United. I'm still somebody, for all their problems, who definitely thinks United has a chance here because Olympiacos is a very different team away from home. And if United can get an early goal, I could definitely see Olympiacos imploding the way Dnipro did against Spurs in the Europa League. These teams aren't accustomed to managing these sort of situations. So when the tidal wave starts going against them, it tends to snowball a little bit. And so I think the key in that game for United is to get an early goal. If they do that, then I think they have an excellent chance to go through still. And by the way, if United do go through and Chelsea take care of business and nothing crazy happens in any of the other six ties, I think we are headed for the best Final Eight I can remember in a very, very long time. When you have Bayern, Dortmund, Barcelona, Madrid, Manchester United, Chelsea, PSG, and Atletico Madrid. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Any conceivable matchup there, to me, is worthy of a final.
There is always sometimes that sort of free pass quarterfinal, and that was going to be my next thing. We're just about to close out the segment here. That was going to be my final thought was we are set for the best quarterfinals we may ever see if United and Chelsea do advance. David Mosse, it's always a pleasure, bro. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Have fun on Fox's coverage, and we'll talk to you in the next couple weeks.
Thank you very much, Danny.
Thanks to David Mosse at Statman Mosse joining us on World Soccer Radio, Sports Byline, US of A. My name is Danny Page, of course, filling in for the Geeb, Nick Geber. Think about what some of those games could be, right? Because now it's just a free-for-all. You can play teams from your league, from your group. What would those draws look like? Real Madrid, Chelsea. Jose going back to Real Madrid. Barcelona, Bayern Munich, the rematch. What about, PSG and United? I mean, incredible stuff. I'm rooting for United and Chelsea in that regard because I don't want to see sort of that one team just slip in to the semifinals because they played, well, let's be honest, at Olympiacos. Timeout on WSR. We'll be right back.
Want to know the secret to success, kid? All right.
Nice. Am I supposed to stand? The Canadian national anthem brings us back, and I like it. We've already previewed Toronto FC with Curtis Larson from the Toronto Sun. We talked yesterday to Paul Dolan, Dolly the goalie, awesome guy. And now we bring in to help us look at the Montreal Impact, former professional, longtime professional, and MLS goalkeeper, Greg Sutton. What's up, Greg? Great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, the first thing I want to ask about is talk about your transition from being a player to being a broadcaster. You know, as a career broadcaster for me, I mean, our job's got to be easy, right? Talk to me about kind of that move for you and how it's all been.
Yeah, well, it's been kind of funny, actually. I got into my last season in 2012, and I kind of got about halfway through and realized that
that was that.
Coming to the point, where I figured, I think it's time to start looking at other occupations. So I was in the tunnel actually, and one of now who is my partner in the booth, Vic Router from TSN, had asked me if I had any interest in getting into television. And I've had a few friends of mine over the years that always asked me, if that's something you'd be interested in, because they thought I would be okay. And I guess decent behind the microphone in front of the camera. So when he asked me, I said, yeah, it's something I'd like to pursue for sure. It's definitely something that might be some of interest. And lucky enough, went through an audition phase and was granted an opportunity to work for TSN. It's been a lot of fun. It's definitely something that kind of keeps me involved in the game, and it's almost similar, very similar to a match when you have to prepare yourself and get ready, and when you're on, and when you're finished, it's a sense of a relief and accomplishment. And it's a good feeling.
Well, I would say, as we're joined by Greg Sutton, former Major League Soccer goalkeeper, who's now a TV commentator for the Montreal Impact, I would say one reason you were selected, not just your skill set, I've seen some clips, I think you're great at what you do, but is that the Impact are really your team. That's the team you most closely identify with, right? You spent 5 years there. Talk about how you are connected, with the team in much more than a pay stub and commentary sense. You really live Montreal Impact in some ways, don't you?
Yeah, I did. I think when I first joined Montreal back in 2001, the franchise was really at a turning point. Joey Saputo, who is now the owner, wasn't the owner at the time. He had been previously, but he had stepped away, and another ownership group was involved, and things didn't really work out with that ownership group, and Joey Saputo was asked to take a look at it, of rejoining the club,
right,
and kind of revamping it and bringing it back to what they had one day had a very successful franchise in early 90s and middle 90s when they won a championship there, and so he had an opportunity to kind of bring the Impact back, and he's done a great job. And this is early 2000s. He had grown the supporters from a measly 1,000 to 12,000 in the A League days, and now has brought the club into Major League Soccer, and so I've lived the transition, and I actually was away from the club from about the 2007 period when I went and joined TFC, and then came back for my last season in 2012. And the club grew tremendous, made tremendous leaps over that period of time, and a lot has to do with Joey Saputo and his passion, and the Saputo family and the passion for soccer in this city, and the fans have done a great job embracing the club as well, and there's been a lot of changes, but all for the good, and it's a city very ethnic, with a lot of ethnic supporters and a lot of diversity, and they really have embellished the opportunity to have a professional soccer franchise at the highest level in North America here in Montreal now.
Well, yeah, I think the fan base is there. I think, obviously the ownership is there now as well. And I love that venue. Obviously, I've never been, but, it looks great on television. It's just the perfect style Major League Soccer venue, Saputo, isn't it?
It's very intimate. It seats about 20,000, just under, I guess. But it's a venue that the fans are close. It is really close to Olympic Stadium the old Olympic Stadium, and so it's got some history in that area. And it's a loud stadium. They have a roof that covers the majority of the stands, and so it keeps the noise in. But yeah, they've done a great job, and they've created a good atmosphere over the past few years now, and it's a typical place for visiting teams to come and play. And I think that's something that's going to be the key to their success over the next few years, is to maintain that home field advantage and take advantage of teams coming in there and putting up with a ruckus crowd.
Love the venue. It's certainly on my to-do list. So let's transition. I kind of wanted to get some of those, general questions out of the way. We haven't really talked Montreal Impact much on the show. By the way, you're listening to World Soccer Radio here on Sports Byline USA, our radio network. My name is Danny Page. Nick Gieber on vacation this week, and we're joined by Greg Sutton of the Montreal Impact as our Major League Soccer previews continue. This is our third preview of a Canadian team. We will continue early next week, moving to the Houston Dynamo, the Earthquakes, so on and so forth. Just generally, though, Greg, what is the storyline for this team this season? What do they need to do to take that next step, obviously? I mean, last year was a pretty strong year considering they're relatively new to Major League Soccer.
Yeah, I mean, this is their third year.
Right.
And funny enough, this is going to be their third head coach. And Frank Klopas has taken over the team now. Marco Schellebaum was let go after the season, even though they made the playoffs last season.
Why was he let go?
It was a pretty good year. Well, I think they tailed off. They lost their identity towards the end of the season, and they just couldn't hold it together. They had started off with such a great start. Really successful on the road, and really extremely successful at home. And it seemed like they were destined to finish in the top three of all Major League Soccer teams, and then just barely scraped into the playoffs towards the end of the year. And so. It looked like they just kind of lost their way and they lost their identity, and I think it had a lot to do with the way that Marco Schellebaum managed the club. And so they decided that this is an opportunity to make another change. And again, this is an ownership group that's very passionate about the game and that really is holds a high standard to the players and to the staff and the fans do, for that matter. This is a city where obviously with the Montreal Canadiens, a lot of championships have been won. And
right.
So there's a winning mentality in this city, and they demand, like I say, they have a very strong appetite for success in championships, and so that's what they're searching for. And I think they felt that was an opportunity to change and go in a different direction, and wanted to get somebody with more Major League Soccer experience, and who better than Frank Klopas, who's been around in Major League Soccer for almost he actually was an ex-player of mine in Chicago when I first started.
Really?
Frank
That's
was
funny.
just lining up his career in Chicago with the
Right.
Fire, and so I know Frank back in the late '90s when he was still playing, and so he's got great knowledge of the league, which is going to pay some huge dividends for this club this year, and kind of just getting the understanding of how to go through a season and the ups and downs and the preparation it takes to compete at the highest level and have maintained that consistency, and that's what they lost last year. So that's probably the biggest storyline right now. I think they're still searching for a few players. I think they have some needs that they still need to fill, but I don't think they're overly anxious to fill them. I think they're waiting for the right players to come around and to find the right guys that'll fit into the system that Frank Klopas is looking to play right now. And so there are a few storylines, but I think if you start off the season, they're a team that it probably is not pegged to finish high in the standings, and that's something that I know they're going to want to change.
I think one of the big questions is Marco Di Vaio. He accounted for 40% of the team's goals last year, and is the thought that he will be able to do that again? You don't want your team relying on that much production from just one individual.
Sure. Let's be honest. I mean, he had a tremendous year last year, and he's the type of goal scorer that really thrives on playing that high line and trying to get in behind defenders, and had a lot of success last year and most of his goals came from that, from playing that high line and getting in behind. And so I think one of the things that most defenses this year are going to really focus on are just making sure that he doesn't get in behind them and try and keep him in front of them. He does have the quality to still score, even if he is facing you up to goal. But I would have to think that there's going to be a bigger focus now on Marco Di Vaio and try and push push the play to other forwards and other players on Montreal that and defenses are really key in on Marco Di Vaio, and he's getting up there in age as well, and so that's going to be something that you'll have to watch and monitor as well, and make sure that they manage his time and not overuse him and push him to the limit where he could fall apart. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's going to be it could be a difficult year for him, to be fair. I mean, I wish him the best because he's a good guy, and I knew him when I finished off my 2012 year, and he was just coming into the team late in that season. So he's had a grasp of the league now. He's got a good understanding. He's just an intelligent player. He's very smart off the ball, and I think that's where he gets the success. So do I see him finishing in the top one or two spots this year? Unfortunately, I don't. I don't think I just think that age is going to catch up to him, and I think that now he's just too much of a known figure in the league.
37 years old now, too. Greg Sutton, great stuff. We have just about a minute left. Want to close out. What do you think? Is this team back in the playoffs this year? And I know that's a really big question, but maybe generalize for me if you can.
Well, I think there's going to be two things that are going to have to happen. They're going to have success at home, no matter what. If they're successful and they can maintain a good home record as they've done in the last season, and make a couple acquisitions. One, I think, in the defensive core, they made one today with adding Heath Pierce to the back line. Yeah, and so that was a good acquisition. I still think they could use another good quality center back, and I think if they can find another quality forward up top to help the load of Marco Di Vaio, then I think they are a potential playoff-bound team.
I couldn't agree more with you. Spot on. Greg Sutton, it's been a real pleasure. Hopefully we'll have you on sometime during the season, a little bit further along, talk about your career in the Canadian national team as well. Thanks so much, man.
Sounds good. Thanks, Danny.
Awesome. Greg Sutton, I appreciate it for joining us. I appreciate him joining us here, former professional, now a TV commentator. Boy, these MLS previews have been fun. I mean, we've literally taken you all around the country already, and we have a long way to go. We're going to talk to Joe Tatino, play-by-play man for the LA Galaxy on Time Warner Cable Sportsnet, Glenn Davis from the Houston Dynamo, Kate Scott, who's the sideline reporter on Comcast Sportsnet Bay Area for the San Jose Earthquakes. Ross Fletcher, play-by-play for Seattle Sounders, Brian Schiretta, who covers the New York Red Bulls for the New York Times. Just some really great, exciting, fun stuff ahead as we, get you in the zone for Major League Soccer. By the way, we're opening our own Major League Soccer Fantasy League. It starts next week. We'll start 1 week into the season because then Nick will be back. Ben Jada is going to be on the show. We'll take you through everything. Our own MLS Fantasy League. It's going to be a blast. It's going to start next week right here on World Soccer Radio. I'll have all the login information starting early next week. Quick break. We're almost done. Send me those last tweets. Let's finish the show out strong, shall we? This is World Soccer Radio, Sports Byline USA. We'll be right back.